What's up YouTube? I'm Mike and today we are talking about growth hormone. I've been running this off and on due to my vacation, so I've had a couple of different attempts at seeing how this particular chemical will work in my body. So I'm going to be talking about its effects on cutting and sort of anti-aging primarily. Just to give you a little background, I have never run growth hormone in my life up until about a couple of months ago, give or take. When I started, I decided to trust a source that I was talking about yesterday called King Dow, I believe, Sigma Chemicals, QSC for short. Their growth hormone prices were outrageously low in comparison to everything else that I've ever found. So I just assumed that it wasn't real. But it was one of those things where I was deciding to trust a second source. I'd been using one source up until there for the previous like 3 years. I'd only ever used stuff from Pharmacom Labs or what I would source from a doctor here locally. So I decided to just give it a try. I think I paid like $55 a kit, and they're 12 IU vials times 10, so 120 IUs for $55. So I said, fuck it, it's so cheap, you know, if it's no good, no big deal, we'll just give it a shot and see how it goes. So about a couple of months ago now, I guess it's been, I started running the growth hormone at 2 IUs a day. Again, I was on a bulk. Typically, I think people use growth hormone when they're cutting, which I eventually did as well. But I started really low because on the forums that I was reading on MesoRx, there was a lot of guys, like when I started researching growth hormone, I kept reading a lot of kind of horror stories about guys getting really bad carpal tunnel syndrome. Not just aches and pains, but carpal tunnel to the point that they were being woken up by it at night, that their hands would go completely numb. A buddy at the gym told me his hands will go so numb on GH that he can like bang his knuckles on the wall and not feel it. None of this shit sounded good to me. I really didn't need it for any reason. I was, you know, there's nothing in the literature that suggests it's just gonna put massive amounts of muscle on your frame. But again, as you guys know from watching my videos, I really just kind of like to be my own lab rat and experiment with different things. And then when I found QSC, like the list of products that they provide is so gigantic. You sort of suddenly feel like you've got backdoor access to a pharmacy. So I was just like buying all kinds of shit to test it out. So at 2 IUs a day, I ran that for the first week. It's been a couple of months now. I don't really remember noticing any carpal tunnel-like effects, really anything except for relatively soon out the gate, the lethargy came on in a major way. I would say probably day 3, maybe, of running 2 IUs. When I started, I was getting up first thing in the morning and taking a shot, doing the injection first thing in the morning, 2 IUs. I did that for a week, and then I decided to go to 4 IUs. And at first, I was splitting the doses up, 2 IUs in the morning, 2 IUs in the evening. And everything that you read tells you that you should only take it on an empty stomach, which proved to be effectively impossible on a bulk. Like I'm eating 6 times a day. I'm eating right before I go to bed. I'm eating in the middle of the night. I'm eating first thing. There's just never a time where I felt like I was gonna have no insulin activity. And so I read a bunch of different stuff, a bunch of different research that suggested that taking it on an empty stomach is primarily necessary if you are trying to use growth hormone for fasted cardio. And again, if I'm misrepresenting this, you know, feel free to hammer me in the comments. Growth hormone is not something that I'm very well versed in because I didn't ever think that I was going to be able to afford it. And so it wasn't really on my radar. And so I kind of just threw it in because I was testing a bunch of different shit from this particular source. So when I moved to the 4 IUs is when I started to notice slight, and I mean very slight carpal tunnel-like effects. I definitely put on a little water weight in that first couple of weeks from running the GH. I feel, if I remember correctly, my ring size went up 1. I noticed the swelling primarily in my hands and in my ankle, like my ankles, my feet. I didn't appear to be carrying a lot of water anywhere else. It primarily just seemed to be in my extremities the most. But again, that fucking lethargy was so bad. I made a video previously talking about this where I explained, like, I don't know how somebody who's working for a living, since I'm kind of early retired right now, I don't know how somebody working for a living could start running this and be able to function. I was regularly taking naps during the day. Like, I would be sitting at my desk trying to do work, and just a wave of this very strange lethargy would just sweep over me. It would just be like all of a sudden I had absolutely no energy. I could not keep my head up, and it was just like being at home. It's even worse because you don't have to resist it. So I would just go lay down and not even really nap. That was the weirdest thing about it. It wouldn't put me to sleep. I would just be so fucking tired, and I would kind of lay in bed with my eyes closed for sometimes up to an hour, and I would kind of just drift in and out. It was almost like I was in a really heavy daydream where time was distorted enough that I didn't feel like I was laying there for an hour, but I wasn't totally asleep either. So weird stuff. I ran that for, I guess I ran like a box, almost 2 boxes before my vacation. And when we realized we were gonna go to Colorado and we're gonna be driving all over the place, I knew I was never gonna be able to keep it refrigerated. So I decided to jump off the GH and use MK677 to try to keep the growth hormone type effects going. And I did that until I got back here relatively recently. So once I got back in town and decided to run the anadrol for a little short experiment, I went ahead and threw the growth hormone back in, really just to get rid of the end of that box. And so I started back on 4 IUs a day, and within 2 days, the ass-kicking lethargy is back. I just got out of bed a little while ago. I was just laying down, kind of dozing, because it really just takes it out of me. So that's the negatives. And that's as bad as the negatives get. It caused me to be very tired and a slight amount of carpal tunnel on the 4 IUs. It kind of flared up and then it went away. I don't even know what that was about. Maybe it was in my head. My ring size changing definitely wasn't, but again, it just seemed primarily in my hands. The good news, and the reason that I actually started it again, because I'm not really at this point using it for any kind of bodybuilding purposes. I don't think it's going to make me substantially bigger than I already am. One thing I can say from a bodybuilding perspective is this shit definitely peels the body fat off of you if you are in a calorie deprived state already. When I was on vacation, we were doing a lot of long days. We did a couple of 7-hour hikes, and where I didn't eat anywhere. I was in a massive deficit for probably the first 5 days of our trip to Colorado. And so the body fat was just peeling off my frame. My legs have never been as freaky lean as they got on vacation with the growth hormone and the other things that were flowing through the system. Admittedly, I was on a relatively high, well, I was on a very high amount of compounds. I was running 500 milligrams of Test E, 500 milligrams of Primo E, 200 milligrams of Trenbolone E, the GH, until of course it was going out of my system as I went on vacation. So you definitely some extreme leanness that I experienced, and a lot of course, just ridiculous vascularity. The insides of my hand, my quads, my legs, like coming from my groin, like if you up by your kind of hip bones right here, there was just webs of veins that shoot down your legs, and there's a big one that wraps around your knee. These things were sticking out so bad, I was borderline afraid I was gonna bleed out if I scratched myself on the trail. Like, the veins were so protruding from my skin that literally, I think if you walk through a rose bush, you could just rip one right open. So just freaky vascular and lean. And that's basically what I experienced from a bodybuilding context. From the old man context, because I'm 41 years old, about to be 42, it has been a game changer. I cannot even express enough. Like, before GH, doing something as simple as this, I don't know if I'll be able to catch it in my whole frame, but just trying to bend over straight at the hips. Like if I was gonna try to bend over and touch my toes, my whole fucking lower back would be a nightmare. If I was to go to a knee to like pick my daughter up, if she was crying or something, just standing up, it's just the creaks and the groans and the strains. And it's just, guys, if you're in your fucking 20s, man, I cannot tell you how lucky you are. Like guys said it to me when I was a kid, and I'm like, yeah, fuck you, old man. I'm not listening to what you're trying to tell me. When I was younger, I could go to the gym and I could do something stupid, like I was horsing around with bicep curls or something, trying to lift too much weight, trying to ego lift, and you kind of strain a bicep and you're like, oh, that kind of tweaked it, doesn't feel good. You go home the next day, you're good as new. You know, there's just, your body just snaps back from every little thing. When I was younger, you feel invincible because it's almost like you are. Like I never had an injury. I broke my hand. That was the only thing that I ever, and that was just from punching somebody. Like that was just something stupid. Like, but as far as like connective tissues and the muscles and the strains and the ligaments and all that, I just felt invincible, and I could do a lot, and I could abuse my body and never really pay for it. When you get up over 35, that shit starts going in the toilet rapidly, and up over 40, it's just a total game changer. Getting up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, like I said, kneeling on the floor with your kid, bending over. I remember one day, I went outside, I had these squirrels that were fucking tearing up my grass. I used to really care about my lawn. I had a really nice lawn full of ryegrass. I overseeded my Bermuda with ryegrass in the fall. And so my lawn was just lush and green year round. I had the Bermuda in the summer, the rye in the winter, and I loved being outside, and it was great. And we lived right on a lake, and so these fucking squirrels were coming, digging up acorns and shit, and they were just tearing my yard up. And I lost it, and I bought this air rifle to go kill all these fucking squirrels with. And one day there was one in a tree, and it was first thing in the morning, and I saw it. I was getting dressed. I looked out the fucking window. I saw that squirrel. I grabbed the rifle. I go and try to like hunch over on the on the back patio to take a shot at this thing. And I don't know what the fuck I did, but it was just like bending over, the simplest act you could imagine as a human being. And it jerked something loose in my back, and I just hit the deck. My back was knotted the fuck up all afternoon. I dropped like a sack of potatoes that night. I was talking to my wife, and I moved a weird way and pinched it and was on my knees again. Just stupid shit like that. I cannot express to you enough how quickly this gets on you, and it is no joke. When I started taking that GH, within a couple of weeks, I began to notice I could bend over, kneel down, stand up fast, fucking bend up and down, do jumping jacks, like play with my kids, get in and out of bed. Like I was a brand new man again. And all of my joints, connective tissues, like discs, all of that started to feel better in a hurry. Another one of my buddies at the gym had told me that he recommended that I steer clear of the GH, one, because it was expensive, and two, because he had experienced the same thing, that when he got off, it was like he just became an old man again. All those old nagging joint pains and ligament pains and muscle strains, it all came back, and he said it was miserable to try to get over. And so I thought, well, okay, so I know what's going to happen, but fuck it, I still want to get a taste of this fountain of youth anyway. So that's what I did, and I'm happy to tell you that it does not wear off immediately. When I went on vacation, I jumped off the GH, and so I guess I was off for about 3 weeks total. And the reason I got back on was because at around the 3.5 week mark, I was packed. My wife and I had been gearing up for this trip that we're about to take. She and I both are probably gonna make a video tonight, giving you guys all the details of exactly what's getting ready to go down in this house or in this family. And so I was on the ground packing up some stuff, and I was like, fuck, and I was struggling to get off the ground, my lower back. And I thought, damn it, the GH is gone. And so I jumped right back on it again. And it's only been a week. I'm certainly not back to feeling 16 again, but I'm feeling better than I did a week ago, minus all of this lethargy. So, all of that to say, if you decide to get on growth hormone, especially if you're in your older years, if you're an old man like me or older, I would definitely stay on it as long as you can. Now, this is not medical advice. Obviously, I'm just telling you from my own personal experience, because it can take 2, maybe 3 weeks for that lethargy to go away. It did go away last time, but it took far longer than I would like. I think I'm on day 6 now, and like I said, I just got out of bed. So it definitely takes a while for the lethargy to go away. And when you stop taking it, you just restart that process all over again. So I had like 2 or 3 weeks of miserable lethargy, and then I got all of the good effects from taking the GH, and then I stopped it to go on vacation. And when I started again, it's just, you start the process all over again. So if you can afford it, if you've got access to it, definitely just keep running it, because any break that you take is likely going to start all of that misery over again for you. Obviously, there are many people talking about this, people who are far more educated than I am, who can tell you more about the bodybuilding benefits. I know several guys in the gym that run it pretty much year round, and these guys are freaks, man. The leanness, the paper thin skin, the freakish vascularity. Now, a couple of them do have a little bit of the distended gut. That was the other thing that I was very concerned about. You see these guys, GH gets a bad rap for causing the notorious bubble gut. And I had convinced myself that you just, you take a couple of IUs of GH and boom, your fucking stomach just blows up. Apparently that's not the case. I think it's from much higher doses and compounding with insulin and a whole bunch of other shit. So I have not noticed any distension of my abdomen. In fact, when my wife and I started, we took some measurements, because it's so easy for you to keep looking at yourself and you go, oh, everything's normal. So we took some measurements of my abdomen, and it has definitely not gotten any bigger. It certainly got smaller when I was on vacation. So that's really all I have to say about the GH. If you, in my experience and the things that I've been reading, the stuff that I'm getting for cheap is good. It's certainly creating the side effects and what you would expect from GH. I have not read anything negative about it. I have seen quite a few independent lab results from Janashik, I think that's how you pronounce that, who tested QSC's, a lot of their gear, but tested the GH and found it to be pure. So if that's the route you decide to go, and assuming, of course, that you're living in a country where this is legal, because this is definitely not medical advice. It's definitely not legal advice. I am absolutely not promoting you using illegal drugs or breaking the law in any way. So when I talk about sources like QSC or Pharmacom, that's with the understanding that I'm talking to a person who's living in a country who can legally purchase these drugs. If you are not living in one of those countries, then just don't listen to anything I just said. Go to your doctor and get Serostim or whatever the fuck it's called. Pay $1,000 for 120. It's outrageous. Whatever the fuck it is, wherever you can get it legally. Obviously, don't break the law. So there you have it. That's all I can really say on GH. Hopefully here shortly, my wife and I are going to be putting together a video going into the details of what we are about to embark on. So maybe that will be up tonight as well. And as always, we'll see you on the next one.